What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome back on the show for a second time ULTRA and Project Stargate survivor and whistleblower, targeted individual, filmmaker, podcaster, musician, athlete, and former Virginia Tech All-American running back, entrepreneur, mental health advocate, and hometown hero from the Blue Ridge Mountains of VA, Tommy Edwards, aka Touchdown Tommy. A little bit about Tommy, if you are new here, if you missed his debut on The Imagination, or if you just need a quick recap. Born in February 1974 in Radford, Virginia, a historic town cradled by one of the world's oldest rivers, Tommy entered a world shadowed by grief, yet illuminated by legacy. His father, Ken Edwards, a Virginia Tech Hall of Famer who wore jersey number 33 and was drafted by the Buffalo Bills, carried the weight of family tragedies that shaped a dynasty of determination. Tommy, inheriting that same number and spirit, would become a beacon for thousands. As a boy, Tommy faced challenges: dyslexia, feeling like an outsider, family struggles, but he discovered fire on the field. At Radford High School, he exploded as a consensus All-American running back and first-team All-State linebacker. In his junior and senior years alone, he rushed for nearly 4,000 yards and scored an astonishing 57 touchdowns, a record that still echoes through the valleys. Recruited by powerhouses, he chose Virginia Tech, following his father's footsteps. In 1993, as a redshirt freshman, Touchdown Tommy burst onto the national stage. He scored 10 touchdowns, including 4 in a single game played against Pittsburgh, led the nation in scoring for 6 weeks, and helped propel the Hokies to a top 15 finish and bowl victory. He and his father became the first father-son duo in NCAA history to score rushing touchdowns in bowl games, a legacy of grit and glory. Headlines screamed his name. Fans chanted, "Touchdown Tommy." The program ascended from mediocrity to dominance, setting the foundation for future championships. Yet beneath the cheers lay hidden struggles. Injuries mounted, concussions, mono, undiagnosed issues, culminating in a 1995 breakdown that ended his football journey. Depression gripped Tommy and he retreated, his identity now a mystery. But he refused to stay down. Returning home after the 2007 Virginia Tech shooting, he founded the Heart of Virginia Foundation to destigmatize mental illness, prevent tragedies, and advocate for better services. He toured with his Stigma Tours, blending music and message, performing alongside legends, owning businesses, and warning parents, choose wisely. Your children only get one brain. Keep it healthy. Tommy's story deepened into a profound journey of awakening. Repressed memories surface of childhood encounters with Project Stargate, MKUltra, and lifelong targeting as a gifted star child. He endured and continues to endure gang stalking, electronic harassment, false hospitalizations, and he even had a terrifying SWAT standoff. Yet he emerged stronger, speaking truth against corruption, exploitation in sports, and hidden programs. Diagnosed with advanced CTE symptoms, brain scans showing severe damage that should have left him institutionalized, he battles daily with severe symptomology, but his spirit remains unshakable. Today, Touchdown Tommy is no victim. He is a victor. A musician, podcaster, entrepreneur, mental health champion, and whistleblower, he creates art, shares his journeys on social media, such as on X and YouTube at Tommy Edwards 762, and inspires survivors worldwide. He proves that no matter the shadows, grief, injury, injustice, or unseen attacks, the light of truth, self-knowledge, and inner strength prevails. Tommy reminds us, knowledge of self is self-empowering. From scoring records that changed a program to fighting for brains and souls, he stands as proof that true touchdowns happen when we rise to demolish strongholds and lift others. He is still running, stronger than ever, toward a brighter tomorrow. The greatest victories are won not on the field, but in the heart of those who refuse to quit. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming back today's guest of honor, voice for the voiceless, CTE advocate, artist, content creator, an All-American running back turned All-American hero, the one, the only, Tommy Edwards. Tommy, it is an honor to have you back on today. It's so good to see you. It's been, what, 2 years since you've been on?
It has. Actually, just a little bit more than, I think it was like right after Christmas last time or right before. And yeah.
We got a lot
So,
of catching up to do. It's wonderful to see you, and you're looking great as always. I love the glasses and the hat today and all of the decor behind you.
thank you.
I love all the art that you constantly bring to the table. We showed some of that on the last episode. And for people who missed that episode, I will have that linked in the show notes. Tommy shared, I think it was 3.5 hours we did of his testimony, diving really deep into his college years, his childhood, Stargate program, MK Ultra. Today, we're going to sort of catch up, pick up where we left off. I wanted you to share your experiences. We did a podcast together, and then you had gotten invited on a lot of other podcasts. I wanted you to sort of talk about the good, the bad, and some of your experiences continuing to whistleblow.
Well, it's one of those things where I never set out to be a whistleblower. I just was, um, a kid trying to, win his dad's affection, and and then that led into um, me being pretty good at something, and then like excelling in it, um, because I put an extreme amount of time and effort and energy and focus into it, even though it was something that ultimately um, didn't speak to me, and like I had to um, adjust my like suspension of disbelief, you know, for a long time in my life to be able to um, make it make sense. And then when it didn't anymore, um, it was like the world looked at me like I was crazy. And then as far as like the whistleblowing part, um, just a few years ago when I had a nonprofit organization called the Heart of Virginia Foundation that I had started after the shootings at Virginia Tech, which in itself put me on their shit list. Um, and in starting that organization and trying to find volunteers and to get things done initially with essentially no budget, and a lot of people in the area uh, not understanding what I was trying to do or why. The first person that really jumped on from outside of just the core couple people that I organized to try to get the thing off the ground was the father of Derek Odell, was Roger Odell, and he actually was sitting having a meeting with the Roanoke head of the Roanoke chapter of NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and there was an article about what I was doing on the wall behind them at the coffee house where they were meeting, and he reached out to me and wanted to see if we could work together because he felt like what we were doing was the only thing that actually addressed what happened at the shootings and what caused them, and as a way to try to prevent those things, and in the future, and try to understand, um, but when things are manipulated uh, as a way to change policy or push policy changes, and to perpetuate the ongoing everyday um, like trauma, like like traumatization of the general public through the news and just through public events. Um, like I didn't set out to whistleblow there. I just wanted to raise awareness for mental health as a way to prevent school shootings, and a way to help the first responders uh, and people who were directly, affected by the shootings there to be able to have the ability to um, come together as a community for a learning moment, teaching moment. And it wasn't that at all. Like it was like they did as little as possible to do it, to like really acknowledge anything as a way to avoid any liability. And some weird shit, that went down after all that. Had people that would come volunteer that would inevitably sabotage whatever they were doing, you know, and over and over and over again. Like, you if it happens once or twice, you can chalk that up to just coincidence. If it's folks that have different mental illnesses that are volunteering, you can maybe chalk it up to like 8 or 10. Because things just sometimes just don't work out, and people have uh, good intentions, but their follow through is not great, or that maybe they're on a little bit of a manic high when they show up, and then you don't see them again to the next one, and it's a whole different ball of wax, um, and it's just bizarre. But then when things just start, it gets into a place where, like, statistically, the probability uh, of so many things occurring in such a way that to slow the progress, or to diminish, like, just resources, to limit what we could do. um, you start to not be able to see, not unsee it, like you start to see that 10,000 foot view, of bigger stuff. But even at the time, I wasn't able to have the distance to be able to see it in that perspective. um, as information started to come out about CTE, after you know patient zero, I think, was, or patient number one, Mike Webster, I think it was like 2005 or something like that. And, like, I can't remember when the movie Concussion came out, but that brought a lot of um, people to the table as far as just knowing what it is, that knowing that it is a disease, and it's something that's it's a degenerative brain disease. I started looking into that because I never really had, like, when I treated the symptoms and stuff that I had in college with anxiety and depression and different things through the lens of psychiatry or pharmacology. I always wound up with really, really, like, negative kind of just side effects, like suicidal ideation, and like dissociation. Like, I had a fugue state. At one point, like, after college, I was living with my fiance, and I wanted to play music one night and didn't come back for 4 months. And it was just bizarre. Um, and coming to find out that, you know, folks that have depression from hitting their head a bunch, a lot of times need different, just need a different, like, course of treatment. And SSRIs are, that's part of the reason that there was such a kind of a bloom of former and current NFL players and hockey players that suddenly, you know, bang in the chest as a way to preserve the brain so it could be studied. Um, and that was told to me by a shrink that worked for the NFL, but also the Eisenhower Center, uh, where I went to the after the impact program. And yeah, he said that it's just a recipe for homicide, and the old um, self annihilation, um, like omega programming almost, like, if I'm remembering that right. But yeah, so and that pushed a lot of like hysteria. It like in conjunction with the condition itself, and there were several instances where people were violent, and they have impulse like control is one of the symptoms that people that some of the earlier kind of indicators that the depression and headaches, things like that. Um, then as I started talking about the neurological damage aspect of it, and through the lens of CTE, suddenly I started getting a lot more pushback online. Like I just moved back from to my hometown following when I split up with the woman that I had the condo in Nashville with, the one that bought the condo and like enticed me to go there, and like had all these connections set up for me who didn't turn out to be like really any real connections, and and they just kind of evaporated once I got there. And like I said, there was weird shit going on, like when after we did the show last time, talking to, I was watching, one of your shows with it was maybe the round table with Nathan and Gray and Carrie, and Gray's talking about the the Nashville Jewish Community Center, which was across the street from where I lived there, and then that's I think I contacted you guys right away. I was like, hey, did he just say? And because it was just weird, overlay there, and then like I said, I've always felt like I was being watched when I lived there, the house in the condo there.
And this is in Tennessee.
In Tennessee, yeah. This was in Belmead, just in West Nashville, and it's this high rise. It sits out on the highest point in the county there, and bought a condo on the ninth floor, facing downtown Nashville, and that whole side was just glass, that whole wall. And it's really modern and cool, but it was really isolating and like kind of cold, and most of my neighbors were older, like much older, like the two ladies that lived in the little branch hall that I lived in, or I think there were three of them. Like the combined ages would have been like, 185. like one of the ladies was like 6'3", and they're all these older Jewish women. They were hilarious. They all had like door knockers that said, was it, oh, shalom, y'all. Just this southern twist on it was funny. But it was just a weird time. Like
And what was the address on that high rise?
Oh yeah, 6666 Brookmont Terrace, and it had condo 909, which was it was a cool spot, but like I couldn't get my friends in Nashville that lived there to drive out there ever, and like it was just a pain. Like I it's like they had this great place that I just spent my time alone in, because my girlfriend at the time became my fiance. She lived in Roanoke, and I learned in 2020, after I had a handler that signed to me, but from the CIA, we got to break cover and tell me what was going on, that she was a handler, and that, and because I caught her putting shit on my phone, like spyware, like cloning it or something, and she just kind of broke ranks and told me, and then confirmed other people throughout my life that had been, not just coincidence that I met them, other handlers and stuff, and the one that the condo with there in Nashville was one, and she had entered into my life with the intention of throttling it and my success and kind of undermine it, um, and she gaslit me like for 5 years, and like I had the succession of stalkers that happened at one, and started this one started just with the roommate of a friend of mine in Roanoke when I still lived there back in like 2009, and I get these weird text messages, and she wouldn't tell me who she was, but she said she got my number out of her roommate's phone, and then I ended up moving from Roanoke to Asheville, and was down there for maybe 6 to 8 months before I figured out who that was, just through like selective communication. Wouldn't tell anybody when I was traveling, was coming back to Roanoke, and that kind of thing, and I just showed up at this one venue that we used to play all the time, and there was ran into to the friend that was this girl's roommate, and we're just kind of catching up. I order a beer, and the waitress handed me the beer. She sent a text message to somebody, and then like almost immediately my phone, I get the stalker message, and I hadn't had any communication with them for, I don't know, maybe 4 months, because I just was not communicating, wasn't moving around, I wasn't making myself available, um, and I wasn't in the area. It was a big part of it. So, but I figured out who it was. Like I asked my friend if she just sent somebody a text message informing them that I was there, and she said, "Yeah." I said, "Guess who I'm sitting across from?" And I said, "Okay." I said, um, and I showed her the text message and like the text before that and stuff, and she was like flabbergasted, And she sent a text to her roommate and said, "Are you a stalker?" And the roommate replied, "Tommy Edwards doesn't know me at all." It was really bizarre, but I kind of had a feeling that it might be that chick, because we'd gone out a couple of times when I was still living in Roanoke right before I moved to Asheville, and she would like show up kind of randomly, and it was like on a real snowy night. A friend of mine, the girl I was dating at the time, and I went to downtown Roanoke to the Stance Club, which typically had live music. For some reason, like a couple nights a week, they had like a DJ, and that was I was never there that night, but on the DJ nights except this one time. And this girl comes in, and she's like constantly like staring at me, and then eventually when the music gets going, she grabs some guy and goes out on the dance floor and starts dancing really, really provocatively and staring directly at me the entire time. And so much so that my girlfriend was like, "Do you know this person?" And I said, "Somebody that I see around like at the music venues, but I didn't know her name." And that's when I found out she was the roommate of my friend that I ran into that one night. That I figured out who it was. But it's like two incidents like that where it made us feel so uncomfortable that that we left, and just because it was like, I mean, like really provocative dancing, like and like staring at, and it was really weird. So then, um, when I moved to Asheville, that girlfriend followed me there, even though I said not a good idea, and and then she turned into stalker um, for like 3 years. Would send me like just from different area codes, and like right when I first was in the process of moving to Nashville, like somebody had followed me around North Carolina, different locations, and in Virginia, and taking pictures of me with different people. I'm like, these are just people I work with, you know, and friends, and but sent like DVD of all these pictures to like my girlfriend from college at her work, and like a friend of a colleague from community service board I worked with at her work, and just bizarre. uh, and my fiance at the time, um, and it was really weird because, um, well, long story short, part of that ended up being the fiance, like having a burner and a bunch of SIM cards, acting like somebody stalking me, and stalking her. Like she made police reports with me in multiple jurisdictions in 3 states. And it wasn't until when I was moving out in 2014 that I, behind the door in the closet for the master bedroom, which was like on the third floor, the closet had its own window. You know, it was a big um, kind of deal there. But I found SIM card. I mean, I found the phone with the SIM cards, and it had, you know, text messages where she had texted a friend of mine, and where she was texting me, acting like somebody, like a stalker, and it was like threats. It evolved to threats at this point, and it was just really weird. I mean, I couldn't imagine ever like subjecting somebody to um, just the level of gaslighting, or just in general, like to enter into somebody's life, you know, have an intimate life with somebody, and then but have the whole time have this ultimate goal of just kind of just, you know, just hamstringing you, and trying to, you know, to um, fuck up what you're doing. It's just crazy.
Yeah. And I have on the screen one of the text message exchanges of an example of this type of correspondence that you have experienced with somebody named Greg McCoy.
This is Greg's. It had been brought to my attention in 2014 at the opening um, of my retail location from the family business side taken over. Um, we did that the same day. We did a an event for Heart of Virginia Foundation Music for Mental Health Awareness. We did the rock and roll cookout. You know, just something fun. We had some bands, and just as a way to draw attention to mental health, and I'd had a car accident 3 or 4 days before, when the Rock and Roll Cowboy album came out, same day. And then the next 3 days, I was like, I had a lecture that I did at Radford University to about 4,000 students for University 101 speaker series. And then I had a, what you call it, chamber mixer at my retail location. And the next day we had the grand opening with the rock and roll cookout, and I also went, had a scheduled meeting with State Senator Cree Deeds, who was stabbed multiple times in the back by his son, who later um, took himself out with a shotgun or like a hunting rifle, because they couldn't get the young man, like they couldn't find him a bed in a psych hospital. And there were plenty of beds throughout the state. There's just no comprehensive list of how to coordinate those things. And because they had like just like a certain window of time to be able to involuntarily, you know, find that person a place to I guess stabilize, you know, for a minimum of 72 hours, um, that he was sent home just with his parents. And he nearly killed his father, who's a state senator and an attorney in Virginia. And I mean, I got to our meeting there. It was like the Homestead or something up near West Virginia, or one of those swank old school spots um, near Covington, I believe. And I get there and we're sitting there, and I'm like, "What you're doing is great," and like I had nothing to say to him. Like I didn't know why I was there, just other than that I had scheduled it to be there. I had that was really bad head injury from the car accident. Like I was actually driving back to my sister's school where she was helping me put together a PowerPoint presentation for the lecture at Radford University, which was like supposed to be the following day. And the airbag gave me just a horrible concussion. I rear-ended somebody that stopped like suddenly, um, like out of nowhere, um, and so then I had post-concussive syndrome from trying to like do all that shit while I was concussed, and like so that kind of led to me. I had post-concussive syndrome, which was really difficult, and it was right when I had taken the family business over, um, which required a lot of like intense work at different periods of the year, and I was having to do it all myself. Where my dad had himself and like employees, and sometimes me as well, and to do all these different things, and it just was like too much. Um, but I like started just kind of like talking about the difficulties of living with brain injury and CTE as kind of an example of the you know trying to understand it through that lens. And then I had brain scans done in 2016 where the neurologist doing the post scan evaluation excused herself because she thought she had the wrong images, and said that came back in and said typically somebody with that much damage would live in a nursing home. And that was 2016. It's a degenerative condition, um, a disease, and like it's odd. Just in the last week, I met somebody who doctor down in Florida that claims that they have um, a method to be able to diagnose it through EEG, to be able to recognize the tau proteins, and then different treatment options. They're they were advertising a study that they had been doing for Alzheimer's, and CT and Alzheimer's are similar because except uh, CTE just have the tau protein that starves off the capillaries, and when they break, and that kind of self-replicates and just kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It just keeps kind of taking over more and more and more real estate, causing cell death. Whereas Alzheimer's, you have the tau protein, but you also have amyloid B like proteins. I think that are in like equal um, proportion. Um, but I reached out to them to see if they would be interested in creating a diagnostic for the living, because up until at that point they would not they wouldn't the establishment wouldn't would not recognize any of the clinical diagnosis of CT, just the pathologies reported, and that's I'm sure that was as a way to like insulate like the football industry, the the sports industrial sports you know complex, or like which is it's part of the distraction wing of the military industrial complex, and underwritten by, and it normalizes violence, and kind of teaches children amended like um, like concepts of nationalism, patriotism through like school spirit, and you have the military marching bands, all the kind of like regalia, um, to but and also as a way to not just keep us distracted and have us beating the war drums when we need to, but also as a way to keep us divided. And because you have this team and that team, and it doesn't matter. We're on the same team.
Yeah.
We should be
And
anyway.
CTE stands for encephalopathy. Did I say that right?
Yeah. And
that's frequent in football. Is there any other sports that cause that?
Yeah. Yeah. Sports and non-sports too, like just like domestic abuse or like just repeated brain trauma.
Okay.
And then you don't have to have any concussions to get CTE. It's the accumulation of brain trauma through brain slosh and different like quick stops and jerks and lots of different sports, soccer, hockey, rodeo, extreme sports, skateboarding, motocross, wow. BMX, and they're the professionals in all these different sports that have tested positive post-mortem for CTE. Wrestling, pro wrestling. I'm sure that roller derby would probably have some contributing factors there as well. Anything in any combat sport or gladiatorial sport or collision or contact sports are susceptible, but also military through concussive blast exposure or just straight up just trauma to the head, repeated blows to the head, like boxing, MMA, any of the classic beat 'em up sports.
I think society hears about it most in football, but that's really fascinating. In a bad way, how many children are being put at risk for this in all these different sports.
Well, about 1 million every year play youth football, and about 1 million play scholastic football in high school, and then that whittles down to about 63,000 total college players at all levels, at all divisions and levels of college football, and then that dwindles down to 1,500 NFL players, which is all what the goal of doing that kind of whole thing and trying to move through the ranks and from childhood to the childhood dreams or a lot of times it's the dream of the parent. I remember the first year I played football, I was 10 years old, and I remember being in practice and looking at my buddy going, how the hell is this shit legal? How is it legal that adults can just have us just fucking run into each other? Because it goes against all natural instinct. And the older you get, and the faster and more you weigh and stronger, you just subject yourself to crazy G forces. I mean, I ran a 4.42 40 and weighed 235, and they determined if I ran into myself, run full speed, like a linebacker or somebody that has a similar it's athleticism and speed and body weight, that we could generate G forces well over 150 Gs, and up into 175, and they say 75 can kill a person. We were doing 175 regularly, in practices, 4 days a week, and then games, thousands and thousands of hits like that.
Not to mention too, in your case, you were a full-time football player for many, many years. This was your passion, as well as you were in MK Ultra and these different programs, which also expose you to tons of different trauma and brute force. So you were compounded with the trauma.
Oh yeah, and then there's the brute force of satanic ritual abuse, and it's like the ritual abuse used to split personality, to force dissociation, but that also increases acuity, like perceptual acuity. So it's like Kathy O'Brien talks about it, how like your visual acuity, like you notice so much more stuff. You become almost like photographic memory, but you notice more in depth around you, like just like the details, more so than most folks, like by like 500% or something like that. I think is what their claim. Well, it does that for every perception like method. You got the five senses, and then you got the psionics. Like sensing. You know, and that's what that was the whole purpose behind Stargate and the like studying the human potential movement, and uh, remote viewing and telekinesis and all that stuff. Well, that stuff gets enhanced too, and I think that was part of the is to detect and to recognize uh, youth that had these skills or potentially had skills, because it's something that everybody can do. But if you already have you know extra something that they don't really know how to, like, what to do with it, like as far as academic kind of perspective, that it's got to account for something, like really just monster IQ,
Because most
because
children, I mean, like you said, that's not a subject in school, psionic abilities, unless you're in gifted programs and taken to these different sub programs like you were that are kind of off books with school, but for you, that was something. You had an extremely high IQ, and they even, like you said, commented on that was probably a saving grace for you going through these severe brain injuries too, having that, because of how severely debilitated it can make somebody.
oh yeah, like my first game after I transferred to Boise State, we played Utah State, and I knocked the defensive back out, like is the end of the first quarter or the end of the third quarter, because we had switched into the field between that play and the next play, and like I knocked the defensive back out. They had to get him off the field, and I started to jog off the wrong sideline. Um, like all of a sudden, like we're in white jerseys and blue pants. They're in blue jerseys and white pants. We're in Utah. It's a totally different smell and feel in the air, and it just seemed like just some weird, like surreal experience. So I started jogging off the wrong sideline. One of my teammates grabbed me and pulled me into the huddle, and I couldn't understand what anybody was saying. I was experiencing Wernicke's aphasia, and it's where you get a disruption in the Wernicke's region of the brain, which deciphers language, and it was it's just kind of a terrifying feeling, knowing that I can't, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm out here on the field, and I know this is dangerous if I don't know what I'm doing. I know that much, but I couldn't figure the words part out, And then like we're in the huddle, the quarterback calls the play, goes to break the huddle. I go, and saying like I don't know what, and so the quarterback grabs my face mask, says the play again angrily, because you're supposed to pay attention and not miss it the first time, and still I had no clue what was going on. One line of scrimmage, I grabbed the fullback and said, "What are we doing?" But it's and he turned around and said, "Same as before." And I picked it up, and then I said, "What?" He said, "Follow me, get the ball." But without the like southern kind of sound there. He was from like Utah or Idaho. He was a Mormon kid, big guy, uh, Dale Gravens, but and I followed him, got the ball, took it to the three, and we scored on the next play. Um, but and then like nobody, I didn't know how to talk to anybody about it. Like I was afraid that they would accuse me of being on drugs, and like I, I was. I mean, not during the game, but like I smoked pot and like had began experimenting with like psychedelics, which I attribute to breaking my programming and opening kind of the memory gate for me, when I was at Tech. And but at Boise, it was just kind of a weird deal. So that whole season when I was there, like but the, like my brain rewired itself in that period of time. Like the level of neuroplasticity and the rapid neuroplasticity it typically doesn't happen that way. Um, so like that was kind of a wild experience. And then for like a couple years after that, I would have these kind of reoccurring instances of what's a fork? What does fork mean? Like like what's a screwdriver? What does screwdriver mean? Like just like it didn't equate. It didn't like compute.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Since we
so
last talked, have you had more memories resurface from the programs or your time at Virginia State or as a child?
wait, it's Virginia Tech. Virginia
Or
State's
Virginia
different.
Tech, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have, um, and it's it's kind of hard to quantify or to like sometimes put in words, like because they're like it's impressions. You know what I mean? Like of things that happened. It's like the memories that had of like going with my grandmother to her work, which was in a top secret underground facility at Radford Army Ammunition Plant, based when I was a kid. Um, it's always from the third person. Like I could see me walking with my grandmother, which is this is classic dissociative, like um, memory, um, things like that. But she had above top secret clearance. Like she'd worked for the DoD since she was 16 and Department of Energy, and yeah. Um, so I was taken there, and then I remember for years I had that memory, and I even remember asking my parents like, "Why did we go to Mima's work that time?" They're like, "You've never been there. You can't go there. You have to have clearance to get there to go in there." And then after college, my family had a moving company, and we got to hit the contract for the Radford Army Ammunition Plant for moving stuff, and they had, um, I guess, made the top floor of this underground facility like it was no longer like top secret. It was so, but they had us go in and change out all of the office furniture on that level that year. So, and I remember walking in and going, "Oh, this is exactly like I remember." It was like just like the dream, or like the memory that I had. And then like 2 years ago, wow, a friend of mine asked me to go help her disassemble an old building so she could reclaim the wood from this woman had got this property from family, and it ended up being like a huge like outhouse that we were just like taking apart. But the lady who owned the house, like she talked had some Native American ancestry and was talking about plant medicine, different stuff, and then somehow got on the subject of Radford Army Ammunition Plant. Her dad worked at Radford Army Ammunition Plant, also in the underground facility. She was also taken there as a kid and programmed, as was her brother, who then went in the military and um, wasn't with us anymore. Um, but yeah, and she had and her talking about specifics of those programs that made me. Suddenly, I started getting glimpses of myself in these in different scenarios that from other memories that I had pieces of. I just hadn't had enough um, corresponding like context to understand them through. Um, and then like interactions with a gentleman named Colonel Michael Aquino there, um, which was like part of my splitting of my personality. And
Do you remember any of it clearly?
I remember acupuncture needles in my genitalia, and then touch them with a stun gun as a way to like force dissociation. So that's you know that it was a monster of a monster, and it just weird, like all these parallels in different places where these things were going on. Like when I was my time in Nashville, I was being programmed and monitored and gaslit and just all kinds of weird shit was going on. But I didn't have the framework to understand it through. You know what I mean?
No.
It just seemed like really weird after really weird after really weird, like experiences. And then like I know like Kathy's, a lot of her stuff happened in Nashville as well. And Nashville's a huge. It's like I met this guy, went by the name William Frankenstein. I think his name William Corey is his name. But he had been in a bad accident, and the nurses at Vanderbilt, gave him the nickname Frankenstein. But he music producer from Nashville, randomly met. Like I'm sure it wasn't random, but because he had posted something on my buddy's Facebook page right as I was leaving that buddy's house after interviewing him for the CTE based documentary I was working on called Brain Sloshed. And I just reached out to him because, like, I've been painting these Frankenstein paintings, different representations of Frankenstein, on and off since 2008. What I did, the first one I did was like Frankenstein and clown face, and it says it's paint me a smile, make me a monster. It's just like representative of big pharma and psych meds. And but right about that time, I was really like cranking them out. Like have like maybe 30 or 40 Frankenstein paintings, from this big to like 4 by 8 foot, like full size paintings of Frankenstein that you walk around the corner and see, jump scare myself, even though I painted it. Just weirdness. And this guy, he starts talking about CIA and how I was recruited and brought in this program as a child, even like, and had already been marked for it before I was born, and that it was similar, like similar to like Stranger Things was kind of how he described the program, and part of why I was being fucked with and followed and targeted, and like I never even considered myself like really a whistleblower so much as just trying to share my story as a precautionary tale, so parents would have a better sense of the potential problems and like the inherent risk of brain injury for youth playing contact sports, especially prior to certain developmental stages or during certain developmental stages. Like the youngest person that had been diagnosed thus far, post-mortem, was a young man who played 4 years of high school football, and then that summer, he was 18, I think. He he ended his life, and his parents had the wherewithal to have his brain looked at, and he had significant amount of like like lesions, and just like late stage 1, early stage 2, and he was 18. But before that, I think what's his name played for the New England that like murdered 2 people the year that they went into the Super Bowl. And I can't believe I can't remember names. But like I said, driving back to do the interview, like had EMF go through the roof of my car, and got the smoky vision thing going on. And there had been a car that had, when I took a right and turned down the hill by the college, this car had gone from the far right lane, pulled, like had to like drive around the car in between them over to the left lane to turn to come down the hill after behind me. And then as soon as I got in behind me, it's like head starts feeling thick, and I feel like this weird, like almost like static feeling in the air, and things get like my visual cortex gets smoky, almost like sepia tone a little bit, and so I knew that was happening, and I almost immediately felt like cognitive, like droop, if you will, like dip. I suddenly just couldn't think straight, and it's the kind of thing it's the technology that's associated with causing Savannah syndrome, or Havana syndrome. See, I just can't even talk right now.
And this is obviously today. You're talking about driving to this interview today, yes. And Tommy was mentioning before we logged on that he's still feeling the symptomology of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was like right before I came in and tried to get everything on to just start the podcast, like just driving back to my house from my mom's, and just like my word recall right now is awful. I mean, and I've been having like frequency attacks at my house every day since I moved back here from Nashville in 2019. I have like some type of energy, like swarms that my infrared cameras pick up, and like there's 2 big satellite dishes on a tower across the street from my house over in a railroad switching yard, and they're both pointed at my house. Like I mentioned it to one of the railroad detectives one night and asked him what they were. He said they were for communication for the railroad. I said I get a weird feeling that they're causing like this frequency that's going on in my house, because it wasn't there when I first moved in, and all of a sudden it started up, and I've got a bunch of recordings and stuff I've been meaning to send to have like audio, like fingerprinted, by Amy's Audios down in Florida there, and one day the girl I was seeing was sitting on the couch with me, and she could hear it too. And there'd be multiple frequencies going on, high frequencies, and then like a pulse, and then there'd be like a low. In this case, it started sounding like a radio broadcast. And there was another spot in my living room when you first came in. If you stand there, I'd had at least 6 people tell me that they could hear what sounded like a woman talking, or the radio. And this was when I didn't have any electricity at one point. People come in and they stand there like, where's that noise come from? Where's that voice come from? And in this instance, it sounded like the radio, and then like I was holding my phone recording the audio, and then depending on where I stood and how I held the phone, like the sound would change. And it was almost like it was, I don't know if we were being gaslit and this was intentionally being like broadcast towards us, but it was like snippets of like walking in and out of different news programs from different time periods, like Ted Koppel and like what's his name, Walter Cronkite, and there was a baseball game at one point that we could hear, and just weird. Like my house is old. It's like it was built in that 1880s. It's an old railroad house, or it's an old farmhouse that got moved by the railroad to where it is now, and it's just bizarre. It was like it's almost like how I stood and held the phone and where I held it, almost like a giant what's the space kind of sounding instrument. You know, like, it depends on where you hold your hand and how you hold it, depending on the note and the frequency it puts out, like theremin. It's almost like the room was a giant theremin, and instead of just frequencies, it was playing. We were picking up radio broadcasts from different decades, which is just weird. And I have a recording of that for about an hour and a half. Just weird. But like my video cameras are hacked, and they have like an AI attached to them to where it masks over anybody that's not supposed to be there. You know, on my property, not supposed to be seen, or in my house. And like a couple of times, it tried to map over, or like mask over the girl's seeing. She walked to the kitchen. It did that to my dog. One night, like I came in from being gone for a few hours, and I have a little camera in my kitchen, and something was sitting in front of it, and it hadn't been when I left. So I went in to check the footage to see at what point something got set in front of it, and if I could see who put it there. And as I first looking through the logs, there's kind of see this weird movement, and it's like it's emotions triggering it, but there's nothing there. But then all of a sudden you can see the top outline of my dog, and all of a sudden the dog appears out of nowhere, just boom. And if you roll it back a little bit, the screen shows the shape of the dog, but but in the same coloration of what's around it, behind it, almost like the movie Predator. Like it had that camouflage that was like mirrored what was behind him on the front of him, almost like the cloaking material that they have that they've developed recently. But in this case, it's taking the bitmap from an earlier shot and pulling that forward to cover that section, to where it's like wherever the dog is, it takes the bitmap, cuts out the dog, and then pulls that footage from just an earlier snippet to paste in over the dog right there. And I started noticing like that was going on, but I couldn't really be sure exactly what it was as far back as like 2018. But it just looks like pixels in the shape of a person walking across the screen.
Do you notice that these types of targeting events pick up when, say, you do a podcast or you speak out, or do they seem very random and not correlated to your daily things that you do every day?
I mean, it's asymmetrical, so it's like things will be cool, and I'll be able to like organize shit and get some stuff done at my house, and then I'll leave and be gone for 2 hours and come back and not notice it first, but then when I go to get something, somebody's gone through and like remixed everything and like just put it in just random like assortments of shit everywhere with like handfuls of dirt and gravel and or like things will be out of place or taken, or like I've had wheels come off my car as I'm driving. I had the brake lines cut. All kinds of weird shit. Yeah, but yeah, they do kind of tend to ramp up around when I'm doing things, especially things that are advertised like beforehand. And yeah, there's that. Or if I've got something coming up that's important that I need to be able to focus on, they'll just distract the shit out of me and harass me the whole time leading up to that. And
Do you think the point of this is like to debilitate you, to keep you in fear, to make you be quiet? What is the
well,
what's the ultimate goal of all of this?
it's based on the East German Stasi Zersetzung, which is German for decomposition, and it's to neutralize the person for the most part, for whistleblowers anyway, and dissidents. But a lot of the TIs are just people who just tend to be isolated. They have few resources to for support, and it's it exists for multiple reasons. There's the discrediting and neutralization of like whistleblowers or anybody that's inconvenient to the establishment, and then those who are just like having to piss the wrong person out. They got a neighbor who just happens to be on infraguard or like and is petty, or law enforcement or law enforcement adjacent, or even nowadays just the medical industry, because it's all through like wireless body area network telemetry and like the Internet of Things, IEEE, being able to log in under your skin, change your DNA with CRISPR, and cause like neurological events or cardiac events through telephoresis, which is like self-assembly from a distance using frequency as the thing that initiates it, makes it happen. Like the mRNA vaccines, they're trying to pump enough biotech into people to where they can have, people have been like emitting MAC addresses for some time now. Like, like we're just like a Bluetooth speaker. We're more than that. We're the things in the Internet of Things, and apparently we're pretty good like data storage, and but also, there's the element of trafficking the telemetry data of the folks, and there's like the confirmation, where they're trying to get like confirmation of specific reactions. So they have somebody terrorized in a certain way, and if they react the way that they want them to, then that's confirmation. And so they get that 2 or 3 times, or however many times they need to be able to totally map that pathology for that reaction. Then they get that done, and they move on to a different way to traumatize them, a different way to terrorize them, torture them, us, shit. I've had like radiation burns on my face. Like last time I drove to see my son in the Midwest where he lives. On the way back, I was attacked so bad with direct energy weapons or the plasma sphere or photons or whatever, like whatever it is, like crystallography. I don't know. There's so many different like terms associated with the synergy perspective of what's happening. But whatever it was, it burned my face to the point where all my beard would fall out on one side, and then I have these burns that looked like they looked like burns on my face, around my mouth, and I had like radiation poisoning for like 10 days. When I first got back that night, I was trying to look up Robert Duncan. He wrote a book, Soul Catcher, Operation Soul Catcher, or Soul Trap. I was actually supposed to interview him for a podcast last year before last, and then he tragically passed away like a few days before I was supposed to interview him, and I found out he lived in Boise, Idaho, where my dad lives, and where I went to play my last year of college football. Um, but as I started picking up on different aspects of things that were going on, it like definitely it increases, like when you're doing certain types of research, trying to find information. And like that night after I came home and I had the burns and like radiation poisoning for like 10 days, after trying to watch some information about direct energy weapons and about um, Dr. Robert Duncan, I got hit so hard with something that through the night I just felt like I was being electrocuted and doing backflips as I lay there. And there's been a few other times where I've had that experience, but um, it was those were all kind of setups, where like the person that I met, we're hanging out and go somewhere to help them pack and move to the area where I live, and then come find out later that they're from. She had lived in Sugar Grove, I guess, West Virginia, where there's no cell phones. It's just giant, like it's just a giant satellite dish that listens to the planet, and everything's bouncing off of the ionosphere or whatever. Um, and that night when sleeping at the house there, same kind of thing. I felt like I was being electrocuted all night. It's just a form of torture. But I know there's worse elements of it too. That just it's just weird. So the targeting, yes, targeting sucks. It's conducted by um, three-letter agencies and their proxies. You got the FBI, CIA, Homeland Security, fusion centers. Then you got the civilian cucks working as proxies through the InfraGard, spying on their neighbors, um, following people around, doing illegal surveillance and psyops and intimidation. Like you show up at the grocery store, there's nobody else there. Suddenly, there's 9 cars pulling behind you, and somehow they all keep ending up in the same aisle that you're in, but half of them don't have any merchandise. They're just walking and looking to see what you're buying, and which is weird. And pretty much any store that can happen at, or anywhere in public, and hear those people talking about you. It's just bizarre. Oh, but the trip where the burns and stuff happened, on the way out there, like in North Texas, that was going into southern Oklahoma to pick somebody up and give them a ride back to Virginia, and then that didn't happen because that person tried to rob me. They did rob me, but I was able to get my stuff back because police officer turned his camera off and gave me some advice as far as what I needed to do to retrieve my stuff. He basically said, find out what their drug of choice is, go get that and negotiate. And but before I even got there, driving out there, I was getting mobbed on the highway, North Texas, kind of north of Houston, and this same cars kept blocking me in, and I could feel I had the EMF like levels were really high as I was driving, so I've kind of got to a place where I could make some moves and get off the interstate, and then kind of zigzag through this little town, and where I came out on the other side was at another exit, like down one or two exits from where I'd gotten off, and something in my head said, pull over and watch. So I pulled over right there at the on-ramp and exit, and just took my camera out and started videotaping or filming. And 53 cars, trucks, tractor trailers, one state trooper, one highway safety vehicle, came off the interstate, saw me filming, and then immediately ran the red light through the back on right back on the right back onto the on ramp. So no reason to get off and get right back on. Sometimes there'd be two cars pull up side by side, and they're trying to get away at the same time. One truck got off the exit, took a right past me, and then as I'm filming over here, it's also picking up the rearview mirror, side mirror, and you can see the truck do a U-turn and come back, pass me this way, and then get back on the on-ramp. And then before this is all over, that same truck comes from, they must have gone down and gotten off the next exit and come down the service road across the highway and then back across the bridge towards me again, and then get back on again. Same license plate, same vehicle. There was, like I said, one state trooper and another like safety highway vehicle. But like I think it was almost 60 of them within like 13 minutes. And I've got video of this. It was just the most bizarre things. It made there wasn't any construction going on. There wasn't any congestion going on. I think only one car in that whole time period actually got off the exit and like didn't show back up and didn't immediately get right back on. They like got off and turned and went left across the overpass back towards some gas stations or something. But that was like like what kind of bizarre world are we living in? Like how many people are getting paid to drive around and fuck with somebody? I mean, coming back here also today, the car where the shit was going on, where suddenly I couldn't focus or think straight. As that car took a right down to go down to where these apartments are before you get back to my house, there was a truck sitting there pulling out, and the truck pulled out, and I've got the right of way. The truck pulled out, and I nearly hit the truck. Like people will they'll orchestrate car accidents. I had a van pull out. I was in my van driving back from work in Pulaski, which is like 20 miles away on the interstate, and one night late, like maybe 3 a.m, I'd been working late, and I'm driving and there's 2 tractor trailers, and that whole like EMF, like super high EMF rating was going on. So, and they had been kind of locked in, and eventually I had just a moment where I could get past and like pass them like on the on ramp, just where another ramp came back on. Used that as like a third lane. He got out in front of them and got up. As I'm approaching, there's a rest area, and a lot of the tractor trailers will like park on the side of the road or like up and down the ramps of those, to get off the road to fill their time off that they have to do. And this tractor trailer suddenly pulls. I'm doing like 80 pushing to get away from these other 2 tractor trailers that are that feel like they're frying my brain. And this tractor trailer pulls back onto the interstate, but instead of just pulling on and getting in the lane and going on, he pulled across and blocked both lanes. And I'm going at like 80 miles an hour, and there's just nowhere to go. I end up having to quickly like maneuver off the left-hand side of the road and then into the grass, and then back onto the pavement from there. And I was going about 80 miles an hour. Like I was able to hit the brake a little bit, probably to slow down, but like it's a miracle I didn't flip my van. I didn't go back to work for like 2 weeks after that. And that was the same. It was summer before last, when we needed a interpreter, or somebody that could speak Spanish. We had a bunch of guys from Venezuela that were working for us, and we're having trouble, with the old Espanol, and suddenly this guy shows up, who's a Spanish translator. He's a pastor at a local church, Pastor Danny Smith, um, and then he goes on bragging about how he had been CIA during the 80s, during Iran Contra. He was one of Oliver North's crew, and just weird, like really weird coincidence. And his wife was currently still in the CIA, but like the number of people in my peripheral, and just in my personal like little sphere and bubble, I've had at least 15 people connected to the CIA that show me some type of documentation or something that you can't just go out and buy, and like the guitarist from my old band from Roanoke years ago suddenly shows up back in the area. I hadn't heard from him in years, probably since like 2013, 12, 13. It's the last time I talked to him, and we had kind of a falling out, and then he popped into my head, and I hadn't seen him in a while. So I hadn't seen any updates on Instagram or anything in a while. So I looked up his Instagram, and there were a bunch of videos and photos from the little town that I'd been working in, right? And he'd moved away a long time, like years ago. And suddenly I get in touch with him. He's living in that town, and he's living in a building that's attached to where we were working, and I had a bunch of art hanging. And then the first conversation we had, he goes, they need you as a remote viewer. I'm like, who's they? I'll CIA. I'm like, so he goes, I've been watching you. And I'm like, I figured as much. And he goes, I'm just joking. But then he'd say things like that again. And it's weird, It's been nice kind of seeing him. We've been playing a little bit of music and stuff. Like last 2 or 3 weeks in a row, like every Tuesday, he's like, you want to grab some drinks? And then like we'll go have drinks and be like, yeah, we need to be as moral as possible. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, and then there'd be like, not really any explanation to where those kind of like suggestions come from.
And for people who are new here, maybe you didn't listen to Tommy's first episode or other survivors who were in the Stargate program, that is actually the CIA's remote view program that is attached to MKUltra, that a lot of survivors now are coming out and whistleblowing that they were used for remote viewing for the CIA in these programs. So that's very telling that of all things was what was said to Tommy. That's definitely seems like that guy had some type of insider knowledge for sure.
Yeah, and he had been working in D.C. before he moved back down here for the Chamber of Commerce, playing music, and like hiring musical acts for different events down there, corporate events and stuff. And if anybody knows anything about the entertainment industry, be it music, sports entertainment, the news, movies, television, just like technology in Silicon Valley, they got the fingerprints all over everything. As far as like, you're gonna have a successful career or not. Like how's this gonna go? And people are either like not aware that they're being handled, or they are, and it's because there's some deeper awareness.
And we know that things like the news, we know how much a lot of us are waking up to how much is orchestrated that we see on TV. Does that apply to sports too? Have you seen, especially at the pro sport level, is there any orchestration as to who wins, or insider knowledge for betting and different things like that could possibly be manipulated that the public wouldn't know?
Sure. I mean, I think it goes on at the high school level. I mean, definitely college. The last game I played in my college career was at Boise State against Idaho, at Moscow, and like I was the leading rusher and scorer, and then like game 5, I had a shoulder injury, dislocated my shoulder, and like stretched muscles in my neck and all kinds of weird shit that happened that it took a while to heal from. And at first, I think they thought I was just, making it up. They had me getting in like a hot tub up to my neck, and then into like an ice water tub up to my neck, back and forth, like 10 minutes at a time, and which can cause you to have a heart attack. But that's that kind of like that's what they would do to mental patients back in the day to get them to snap out of whatever fit they were having. It's just inhumane and dangerous and torturous. I don't know if you've ever been in like a tub of ice up to your neck, and then get in from there, get into a hot tub for like 10 minutes, and then back into the ice tub, back in the hot tub. It's like the contrast is something else. Um, but yeah, that game was thrown. I mean, my sister's first husband was one of the coaches. He had been on the team the year before when they played for the national championship, and they ended up runners up. But he was like the player of the game, player of the season, um, MVP of the whole team. Defensive lineman. He went and was tried out for a couple NFL teams and was on the roster for a minute, and then like had an injury and wound up back in Boise as a GA. And my sister met him when she came out to visit me, and then she ends up moving out there after Christmas, and they end up together, and got married for a little while, and then split up. He was the subject of a ESPN 30 for 30 or about the same Joe O'Brien. He was the youngest assistant head football coach in NCAA history before he got caught selling like pounds of meth to an undercover cop. Um, there's a biography written about him called Busted Bronco, and his document his turnaround after that. But Joe said that he told me that the coaches got paid to lose the game. It was if we had won, we would have gone to the playoffs. Um, but it had been kind of a rough year. Our head coach was dying of cancer at the time. We got him Pokey Allen, and it is what it is. That was a corrupt kind of place when I played out there. Like they put me in touch with a alumni helper who would like take me to lunch and give me $200 or something, or pay for my car to get worked on, or materials for the house we needed. So my bedroom was not just a garage with blankets hanging over the door. Um, and he kept, his name was Paul Ralph. He was J.R. Simplot's next door neighbor. Simplot was America's first billionaire for inventing the fast frozen potato French fry. But he was Simplot's neighbor, and he had like this 15-car garage, and he'd be like, get rid of that old Cadillac, get you one of these little, you got to get you into one of these little Mercedes, and it was like what, a little Mercedes convertible. And when I decided I was going to forego my senior year, he shows up, takes me to lunch, takes me back to his place, and goes, "Which one you want, the blue one or the orange one?" And stick around and play my last season, and I just, it didn't seem worth it to me. Paul's a nice guy, but during the season when my shoulder was hurt, they didn't have me go to practices. I'd go out and hang out with Paul and help him drive around to the different construction sites. He'd have me pick up bent nails and straighten them.
Wow.
Just random shit. And like I wouldn't be at practice for like 2 weeks. I'd just be it was weird. but going into the last game, I finally was the game before that. I finally was healthy and had like good amount of playing time, scored a couple touchdowns, and so going into the last game of the season, you figured I would be the featured back. I was like I said, it was leading, rushing, and scoring, even though I had already missed like 5 games, and I had one play against Idaho at the position of fullback, which I had never practiced once in the entire time that I had been at school there. And so after the game, I ended up just taking my pads, putting them in the bindle thing, took a shower, and I just walked out of the locker room while the coach was still giving like the post game like hoorah, because it was the postseason hoorah too. So I walk out of that stadium and run to a couple friends from school who were from Moscow, and we went. We're looking for a bag of weed actually, and I was able to make that happen in like 10 minutes randomly. Where my friends that were from there, that all their friends, connections and stuff there, weren't able to through like a day and a half, weren't able to make anything happen. Did that, and then we went to a bar, and I wound up going home with this young lady, and just weird kind of circumstances. That was the furthest thing on my mind that night. I just wanted to get drunk and not think about anything, because I knew that was my last time I was going to walk on the field. And I woke up the next morning, and there's this picture of this guy on like, I don't know, an end table or something, and it's really familiar. And back in, I guess, the '90s, there was a Nike ad campaign. It was Dave versus Dave, or Dan versus Dave, or Dan versus Dan, and there were 2 decathletes that were like competing for the to be in the Olympics, and this was one of the guys, and that was his girlfriend that had taken me home, and I'm like, this is weird. It just bizarre, and then wake up, don't have a ride back to Boise, somehow find my way somewhere to where I run into some of the same people I had gone out with the night before, because gotten completely separated from them, but was able to find a ride back, and that was kind of the beginning of just trying to figure out the next part of who I was in my life. But of course, I ended up like actually going through winter workouts and a little bit of spring before I finally actually did, stop. But so anyway, it left me with brain damage, and I didn't realize it at the time. I just had a hard time like sleeping and just with different things, and I had a existential crisis at Tech, which is part of what led to my breakdown, and I had that week I had the breakdown at Tech. I'd been watching Apocalypse Now like on a loop, and which is really weird because Daryl, my mentor and programmer, he was one of the architects of the remote viewing program for the U.S. government. The guy that I met in San Diego when I was in like 2005, maybe 2006 when I first 2005 when I first moved into like San Diego proper and University Heights, and come to find out after he passed away in 2016 that that I had first met him when I was a kid in Radford, when he was in town with Mind Reach, supposedly looking for the remains of this young woman who had been murdered by this guy who was in the waiting room with my dad the night I was born. He played football at Tech and went to my high school, and like the FBI said, they had him connected to 53 murders at one point. They told his former roommate from Tech that, and that guy told my sister at one of the Virginia Tech tailgates. Just weirdness. And the year I came back from Nashville in 2019, I got asked if I wanted to meet the sister of this young lady who had been killed, or murdered, and her murderer was he was the first person committed or convicted of murder without a body in the state of Virginia. His name is Stephen Epperly, and the guy who the proxy that runs my targeting is owned by his nephew, and is Brigadier General John Epperly, who was in charge of the National Guard at one point, and who owns a cybersecurity firm, and it's the handler that told me that she was my handler had been the girlfriend of John's childhood best friend, who runs the financial part of my targeting.
Oh my goodness.
John Epperly's dad is the older brother of the murderer. It was best friends with my mom's first cousin Johnny, and John Epperly is named after my cousin Johnny, who was a detective down in Hampton, who that's a whole other story. But John Epperly is named after my cousin Johnny, and he's married to my cousin Johnny's daughter. So the husband of my cousin oversees my targeting through the as a proxy for the CIA.
And so let me ask you this: you were put into these programs as a young child, but behind the scenes of your own career in football, you were being mind controlled and subjected to these programs. How many athletes do you think go through this, and what is the crossover? Can they create, for example, parts of you that are on the field? Do they dissociate athletes to perform on the field as well? How does that cross over into sports?
Well, I think that they probably do, and some of us get just in the programs early,
Yeah, totally.
through family, or family in the military, family close within the intelligence community, or Jesuit, or Freemason, any of the organizations that are known to facilitate Monarch, trauma-based mind control, and then to utilize us for national security, or under the guise of national security. Not to mention the breakaway society that is the deep state. I started getting recruited to play football at Virginia Tech when I was 10, when I went to football camp there the first time. They put me in a room with the running back coach, and that was a different head coach at the time. And 2 years later, the head coach changed from Dooley to Frank Beamer, who had been one of my dad's teammates at Tech, and the only coach that actually stayed over from that first administration to the Beamer administration was the running back coach that started recruiting me when I was 10. And just weird. I'd say probably a bunch. It depends on what they're being used for. But are you familiar with Andy Piru? Andy Piru's story, Project Superman.
Yeah.
Okay, so he played football, and it was actually a friend of mine printed out his story, chapter by chapter, when I was living in Ventura, California. I had a skateboard company, as I was recovering from the brain injury from a downhill skateboard fall, fractured skull, 3 days in intensive care, and she saw the parallels of it to be uncanny, and then I was reading the stuff, and it's kind of triggering some memories and stuff, and and just really bizarre how similar certain aspects of our lives were. And that was kind of the first time I had an idea of that. I mean, I knew something was going on prior to that back in '99 when after I moved to Myrtle Beach and got arrested in this illegal drug like trafficking thing where they jump in your car with 10-pound brick of weed and charge you for trafficking, and with no money exchanging hands or anything. It was just pure um, just generating revenue through arrests that were later deemed unconstitutional. But let's see, I after I got bailed out of jail, I was there for 17 days, and part of that is when Hurricane Floyd hit, and like the jail was like flooded. Um, and that's which is the reason my mom forced my dad to come bail me out. But when we left the jail, we went to where I had been staying with this bass player in the band I'd been working with, and I could lead you to where it was, but I could not tell you what the street was or the address. And when I got there, my roommate opens the door and he goes, "Hey man, your lawyer stopped by. Here's his card." And I hadn't spoken to any lawyer. Um, and this guy was retired prosecuting attorney for Horry County. He was Naval Academy grad, and he charged me half the price that every other attorney that we ended up speaking to offered to do it for, and he got it dropped, um, which was just bizarre. But that day I had been on my way to meet with uh, the managers of this band at Raleigh that was looking for a singer for the band, and it had been arranged by the bass player from the band Firehouse. They had like some hits in the '80s, late '80s, early '90s, something like that. And so it's like I'm like right at the edge of like this opportunity, and like that band was getting like record label like record deals offered to them. They just needed a singer, so we're going to meet those guys, and he's gonna my manager's gonna stop and pick up like I don't know an eighth or a quarter ounce of weed to smoke, and that happened. And then while I'm in in jail there, maybe the second night, or that first night, this one kid gets put in with me. He got picked up for the same thing, and then they realized it was conflict of interest, and they switched him out. And then these two guys get put in there with me, and they're coming down from Raleigh to meet the singer. Happened to get pulled over, and they'd been drinking a little bit and had some substance in the car with them. And so I ended up meeting the guys in the holding cell I was going to meet with that day to try out for this band. It was just bizarre, but the whole lawyer can't stop by. I mean, literally, I couldn't have told anybody how to get there. I could take you there, but it's one of those things that I had no idea what the street name or address was. Didn't know what the apartment number was. I'd been standing there for like maybe 3 weeks, and just I knew how to get there. That's all I needed. But the fact that somebody had gone there and like somebody obviously had been being observed by somebody. But the one handler chick in 2020, she kind of informed me of a long list of folks that I had question marks about me going back to high school and before. Like it just seemed kind of odd. Relationships, friendships. Like I'd be like a freshman in high school, and this 25-year-old college student just wants to hang out and be friends and give me his ID so I could buy liquor and like just random shit. It just seems weird. And while I was at Tech, like I had in Boise State, different roommates that I had, like and friends that kind of just popped up out of nowhere. The handler things like that's like it's a person that person or persons they assign to you to kind of distract you, keep you out of the headlines, unless they need you in the headlines for something as a way to just discredit you, but as a way to just distract you and like tell you they're taking care of all your whatever you got going on. And typically they're just they're telling you that and that shit nothing's getting done, and then last minute they'll just kind of evaporate and blame you for whatever happened. The typical narcissist kind of thing. But like so the sister of this chick who'd been murdered, that had always been like this kind of thing in the back of my head that I felt like I was going to find her remains when I was a kid. And then on my 23rd birthday, my girlfriend and I had eaten some mushrooms, and we were at the store that his property where my parents had a family business and store, and walking down the property, it's like each place that we stopped was like a station, or like it seemed like one of the seven each one of the seven chakras within the human body, and each one kind of represented a different thing. And we got to the bottom of the property, and there's like a sinkhole right there, and it's like maybe 10 feet from the fence from this Busch Grand National like racetrack, and there's like a pear tree growing out of the edge of the sinkhole, and I had kind of taken a step down into the edge of the sinkhole and onto this pile of brush that was next to the pear tree there. And I jokingly said, "I'm standing on a body." And then my girlfriend was freaked out, and we had to leave, after that. And so a few days later, I was back down that same part of the property. I'd taken the side by side and driven down there to get 10 minutes of just peace of mind, and smoke a joint and just kind of relax. And I noticed I collect old bottles, and I noticed just down over the edge of that sinkhole, inside this rotted out mattress frame, was one of those embossed jelly jars with the grapes on it. So I kind of scooted on my butt down to reach down to get that. And when I did, sitting next to it was this bone that had been cut off about, I don't know, 3 inches above the joint with a radial saw. And if I would find butchered bones and stuff on the property all the time and use them to make art, these bones and feathers and kind of like postmodern, like tribal kind of stuff. Or so I picked this bone up because I figured I'd grab it too, along with the jelly jar. And I picked it up. I'm looking at it. And I'm thinking, what the hell kind of animal is this? Because it had real narrow, like long bone with kind of like a wider joint there. And then it dawns on me it's a humerus. It's like the human humerus bone that had been sawed off about 3 inches above the elbow. And so I freaked out, ran up to the store. It was all uphill to the store there, and I just ended up leaving the side by side sitting there. I don't know why. And ran up there and called my dad to ask what I should do. And odd like back note on it. Before we even bought that property, when we were just seeing if it would draw in good traffic, which it's on Route 11, which is the old highway, and in front of this old house that had been built in the 1820s. It had been a hospital during the Civil War, and just kind of very historic, and but it had pretty good frontage there. While we're there, just my dad brought some of these cast aluminum lampposts over and laid them out on the side of the hill there. We had business ended up being called the Lamppost Mercantile. Um, what happens? Oh, this neighbor from across the street comes over. He's about half drunk. The old farmer guy had been drinking moonshine, and out of nowhere he goes, "You know, I think that Epperly boy may have, or probably buried that girl's remains over on the property over there. He was good friends with the Morgan boys, and they used to hunt together. And it was the Morgan house that we bought and turned into the business. So that had always been in the back of my head. And then finding that, you know, humerus, which was kind of small, it was probably more likely to belong to a woman, um, and called the police. They sent 2 detectives out. They took the bone, showed them where I found it. They said that I asked them to let me know what the results were. They said they were going to send it to the crime lab in Roanoke, and I never really got a call back from the police until I called and said, you know, what were the results? And they said it was a cow bone, which just I'd taken like comparative anatomy in college, and just it was not a cow bone. Like the ratio from the width of the joint to the thinness of the long bone part is pretty much you see in like hominids and humans and birds. About it. Um, some other primates too. But that's about it. And the fact that it had been sawed off with, you know, a radial saw, you know, like a skill saw, just seemed kind of ominous and weird. So eventually, I called the crime lab in Roanoke to ask if they had gotten the results back from that the bone that had been found, and they said that they hadn't received anything in 6 months, 6 to 8 months. So they never sent it to the crime lab. And in between those things happening, I started talking to different people that I knew um, had been, you know, involved or had some peripheral knowledge of it. And when I was a kid, like one of my dad's buddies, another guy who played football at Tech, mom and stepdad owned this big A-frame at Claver Lake, which is where where Gina Hall was killed. Um, Skipper, who's one of my dad's good friends, one of my friends too, but he was like an uncle growing up. Um, he had a son named Todd who lived in Texas with his mom, and in the summertime he would come stay with his dad. And when he'd get here, they would get me to go down there and entertain him and spend time with him. He's maybe 4 years younger than me. But I'd stayed in the house there where she had been murdered, and like it was just weird, like too many like these things stacking up. And like so I went down and started doing some excavation and moved all that brush. And the thing I noticed about the brushes is like there were new layers on top, and then these layers, as you go down, they would just get more and more like decomposition. Uh, and one day I came down there, and there was new brush on top of it. Somebody had taken like loppers and just like cut it one leaf off of this tree and gone over here and cut another leaf, or like branch off this tree and stack it on there to make it not seem like they had cut off in one spot to make it noticeable. But it also wasn't somebody going down there just dumping brush that they're trying to get rid of out of their yard. It was very intentional. So eventually I moved all that, moved the old mattress, and underneath it I found like plastic trash bags. Some of it had like hair like that long attached to it, and skin with hair like this long attached to it, like brown skin or brown hair. Um, and there was like part of a clavicle. Found some hand bones, um, and like cloth, like clothing that looked like it had rust all over it. You know, uh, most like it could have been like blood. It's hard to tell the difference when stuff's compacted and it's like not getting like aerobic like respirations where stuff breaks down. Just like a landfill is just kind of packed in there. Oh, because um, the trash trucks used to dump the trash into sinkholes back in the day. And that was one of them that they would do that with. But yeah, so I found a number of like other corresponding like human bones, and like I said, the scalp was like the skin with the hair like this long on it was there, and I had taken that stuff and put it in like a bread bag and hidden it in the attic up above the kitchen um, of the lamppost mercantile like store, and nobody would have been up there snooping around for stuff. It was in behind a bunch of broken glass and a bunch of weird shit that nobody would have wanted to move to find that stuff. But in 2004, when I came back to Virginia from California to help my dad finish relocating the business, the office, and their home too. They had moved that as well. First thing I went to go retrieve was that bread bag, and it wasn't there anymore. I'd only told one person if it's where it was, even not even like specifically where it was, just kind of like just it's in the attic of the thing, and that was a friend of mine who is an attorney here in town. His dad was an attorney, and I mentioned to him the first time in October of '99 at a Halloween party in Blacksburg, where we had snuck off to grab a drink, and I was kind of telling him of what I had come across the year before, and he was interested in taking it to have it DNA tested. And like when I found that stuff initially, I wanted to try to contact Gina Hall's family, and my dad's like, no, you gotta that it's not her, it's just give them some closure. And the odd thing was, her dad had played football at Tech in the '50s, and like some of his teammates who were part of this organized crime group, along with the murderer, like they'd gone to like introduce the murderer to the dad of the girl to try to say he's a good guy. He never would have done this. He's and just really weird, like the circles within circles. And then in 2020, a friend of mine who had worked as a clerk for me was friends with Delana Hall, who was Gina's sister, who had been her roommate when she had been murdered, and she was actually had taken Delana's car to go out that night, and it was the car that they found just covered in blood underneath a railroad trestle across the river from where Everly's parents lived. And so I ended up meeting with Delana first time, and this guy named Arpad Voss, Dr. Armand Voss, who is like famous, like a forensics guy. He was one of the architects of the cadaver farm in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and he also invented a couple pieces of technology. One of them is a sniffer, and that sniffs out specific compounds that the human body off gases as it decomps, and it does that in a specific order. So by finding these different like signature like gases that come off and contaminate the soil and stuff, he can find clandestine graves, and he used it to find the Hells Angels that went missing and that were killed and buried in a school bus on Spawn Ranch by like the Manson family, and he had been part of Casey Anthony's investigation and some other stuff, but he was helping to locate the remains, which they didn't end up finding her remains in about 6 different places around the area. But I had taken them there to the old property that we didn't own anymore, and we sold it in 2004 to the people who owned the racetrack. And the first thing they did was, the day they took it over, was dig a big hole, use a D9 to push the house over into it and burn it. Now, the main part of the house was 2-story log cabin made out of American chestnut, which in itself would have been worth, a couple $1 million just for the lumber. It's an extinct species of tree, and they had spent a lot of money and time and energy, like bringing in like fill, like old like asphalt and concrete and stuff to fill that sinkhole. Which when we went out there, it was probably 75 feet above where it had been, when we'd gone there and found, what we had found, or when we purchased the property. And they haven't ever done anything with the property other than it looked like they probably spent, I don't know, $500,000 to $1 million in just like building up the elevation of where the sinkhole had been. And Dr. Voss said that the one thing that this other piece of technology that he developed couldn't like transmit through was like big chunks of concrete and like mountains and stuff like that. But we did find human remains at the top of the hill in front of where the house would have been initially. When we get back to the truck to leave out of there, somebody had taken cookies and set them on the ground next to the door where I had gotten out earlier, and they were the specific type of like ginger snap that I like to eat, that are just kind of not, probably I wouldn't say they're the most popular cookie on the cookie aisle. My friends call them grandma cookies. I like those, and like molasses and shit like that. Cookies and just random weird stuff that's not like overly sweet. But somebody had taken some of those cookies and put them on the ground right where I had gotten out of the truck, and they hadn't been there when we got out, and it was just really weird. And before we made it back to the truck, you could hear the sound of a Harley start up, and then you see it drive off, and I kept hearing that same Harley going by my house all the time after that had happened, and I found out that there was, that there was this coordinated effort by folks within the outlaw culture, in combo with the intelligence community, that was like trafficking drugs and humans, and there were a bunch of women that had gone missing from different parts of the country and state, and apparently the Epperly had not just worked as an enforcer for this mafia group, but also he would procure women for to be trafficked back to South America when they would fly down to pick up drugs. It was kind of like a pre-Mena, Arkansas kind of setup. Like Radford University used to be in the top 10 party school in the United States every year. And it had something to do with the fact that there was a duty-free international airport, 8 miles away with no customs. And that all ties back to this other guy, Wally Thrasher, the Flying Squirrel. A couple of books have been written about Epperly and Thrasher, and they actually had interacted quite a bit, working for the same group of folks. And it's called the Blacksburg Mafia, and it was a bunch of restaurant owners and what else? Judges and former football players involved in the drug trafficking and different stuff. And like was it the granddaughter of one of the judges, pretty sure is one of my handlers recently, for like the last 6-8 months. But she'd also been through a bunch of similar stuff, and some of the Stranger Things kind of stuff too. Yeah. but it's all stranger. But yeah, it's a weird shit show. Like this area specifically, it seems that there was like a heavy MKUltra activity here in the 50s and 60s. It's a small, relatively isolated area that's self-contained. It's the Neuro Valley is unique in that it's it's kind of like uh, has relatively isolated communities within themselves, you know, and interspersed with a couple others. And they had the Radford Army Ammunition Plant, which is the largest munitions factory in the United States. And they had a private psych hospital, uh, which was St. Albans, which was like right across the Memorial Bridge from Radford. Um, and Rap University, which was it was a women's college at the time. And there was also Virginia Tech that had a long history with military, had been a military school at one point, still has ROTC, and they have a long history and relationship with DARPA and the CIA for different you know, research and development for engineering and all kinds of stuff. But like Steve Bannon is a Virginia Tech grad, you know, from, from Trump's first administration there. But then like Mudcat Saunders, he played baseball at Tech. He was John Edwards' campaign manager, the one from North Carolina that was running for office a while back, running for president. Then got caught cheating on his wife who had cancer. So, just Tech has a long history of psyops and stuff. Like, and come with like the Tech shootings in 2007. Like, try to research stuff. I ended up coming back to try to just do a big fundraising concert initially, and then they ended up taking the concept from me and cutting me out. And that's how I ended up starting the nonprofit organization. It just kind of like have as more of a long-term goal with it. And was it after meeting families and the folks who had survived the shootings, like there are people who had seen more than one shooter. There are people who had survived the shootings, and were so shooken up that they couldn't drive themselves home back to like the Richmond area or like the beach area, and then 2 days later are killed in a single car drag racing incident where the car hadn't hit anything, but it had a hole in it, like it had been like hit from above from like a like a small missile or something, you know. Just really odd. The same day of the shootings, Tech scrubbed all the connections and the pages they had connected with CIA. CIA had been on campus that day or that week, recruiting and doing some different things. And like, I don't know, a couple years after there was all going and stuff, like it was maybe 2021. I met a young lady online. She was in the middle of a divorce, had just moved back to the area, and was staying with her mom and stepfather's place there in Blacksburg, and invited me over to hang out one night. And I get there, and it turns out that it's the stepdaughter of the executive director of the local community service board, and his house is like looks like something out of Miami Vice, you know, just like modern, crazy like manicured lawn underneath old growth forest. And I get there and hang out, and like she makes me a drink, and start having a drink, and start making out. Next thing I know, I'm waking up like 3 hours later, my clothes folded at the foot of the bed, and this woman standing over me telling me that I needed to leave. And I had like half a drink, and like immediately I almost like blacked out, which was just bizarre. And then I had to drive home and was super like intoxicated, and there's no way I could have gotten that way off of just a vodka and Coke or something. That was just a bizarre experience, and kind of like weird twist on it. Like the shooter's uh, file had disappeared, and then suddenly was found after the statute of limitations was had run up. They found it at the former director of the Cook Counseling Center at Tech's home. Like he had taken it home, but like for some reason, just as a way to make that disappear, and not have it to be a factor. That young man who was selective mute had his first interaction with firearms were a 22 and a 9mm that he'd purchased like 9 months prior. He'd gone to the shooting range like 3 times maybe, and we're led to believe that he shot 2 people in a dorm room that morning, and then left, took a videotape to the off-campus post office downtown and mailed that to CBS, with his kind of like had kind of his manifesto or whatever. It was just like a video manifesto kind of thing, and then changed clothes and then walked all the way back across campus again to Norris Hall, where he then chained the downstairs doors shut, and with a 22 and a 9mm, took out 30 people and wounded like another 25. And like the doctors that treated the wounded that were coming in said it was precision. It was 2 to the chest, 1 to the head for everybody. It was like trained assassin, and he went through so many just bullets, it would have been impossible for a trained mercenary, almost impossible for one trained mercenary to have that amount of accuracy and also be able to reload a shitty 22 and a 9mm. 22 will bounce off somebody's skull, like but they weren't really high caliber, like firearms, and yet he was able to reload and go through over 100, like 125 like rounds in like 15 minutes before capping himself in the back of the dome twice. And,
so do you think mind control could be a factor in a lot of these instances that we hear about?
Oh yeah, and not just instances we hear about, but like we hear about them, but we don't hear the backstory, because a lot of times the person that's gone postal or has been triggered, they a lot of times they're TIs themselves, like Myron May done at the Florida State like library shooting. He'd been like a family attorney, and he's got a 3-part series where he's just explaining everything that's going on YouTube. It kind of gets taken down, and other people will repost it. But and then like the Parkland shooting, like when they caught that kid, he was talking about the voices in his head, and I've had a bunch of people around me in the last few years. My best friend from years ago, his dad was president of Radford University. He was suddenly diagnosed with schizophrenia at like 42 years old, out of the blue, and he thinks it was like remote neural monitoring or somebody doing voice to skull kind of tactics towards him. And then after I moved back from in 2020 and reconnected with him, it started to come out to light that he was also participating in my targeting, along with a whole bunch of other people, including him. There are 5 that we're dealing with some type of V2K or like remote neuromonitoring, which is it's neuro weapons. It's like Dr. James Giordano talks about neurostrike weapons, and how the mind is the 6th battlefield or whatever. Just crazy. I mean, he's got one video where Giordano does. He's got like a big scar across his face, and I can't remember if he's wearing an eye patch or not, but it looked like a Bond villain, like something out of a Superman, villain or something. We're talking about, we can, log into your brain and program thoughts and ideas that you can't distinguish from your own. And it's like during the Gulf War, they used the voice to skull to tell the Iraqi soldiers that it was Allah, and they needed to lay down their weapons and come out and surrender to the Americans, and they did. So it's like with that type of technology, influence world leaders, anybody, and the reason that the Pentagon and the CIA is not like saying, "Oh yeah, Havana syndrome. That's this type of weapon," and we know so because we have that weapon ourselves. But the American citizens and folks that are getting that used on them at our embassies, that's got to be China or Russia. And no, I mean, it's people here, Yeah. And like with the advancements with the Internet of Things and the wireless body area network and all that, like the human brain doesn't have a firewall. So getting everybody just saturated with nanotech to where there could be Teslaphoresis and these independent what you call it, neural networks through the body that are created through these different metamaterials and nanomaterials. They shit. Okay. Where I was going with that, they can be used to that's like we don't need Neuralink. We already got it. There's biosensors all through us. That's what the jab was all about, is just to get people saturated with this thing that can be programmed and used to thin the herd, but also to turn us into more compliant consumers and citizens, and have the ability to use this technology to nudge us to change things, and squash dissent. Some that to be honest with you, everybody's targeted. Just the ones that are getting it right now are just like, this is the test bed, and it'll roll out at any time. And I mean, everybody's susceptible to it. It just depends on how deep in the shit list you are,
And so being somebody who's literally been targeted your entire life, but experiencing the targeting on a more violent level as an adult after getting out of the programs that you were in as a child.
Well, that and because we became a whistleblower or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it went over. I mean,
Yeah.
I published a 5-part series with the Goodman Project in the summer of 2019, and that's when I started to notice I was being followed, and from Tennessee to Virginia, and Virginia to Tennessee, and
Right. The abuse, it just evolves, it turns into something else as you evolve your life and get away from, what you were involved in with the kid. They don't want to let you go. So they continue to abuse you in different ways that are very hands off in a sense. And so I
Yeah,
wanted to ask, obviously there's a lot of people that are going through this, and you're somebody who's been going through it for a long time. What have you learned about either combating, preventing, managing? Do you have any advice you could give to all the many people who are going through it right now?
well, they want you to react. So the best thing you do is not react. Learn as much as you can about it, but you gotta sort through the myth and the reality of it. Um, there's certain protocols and certain like techniques that they use. There are gang stalker like handbooks that have been like whistleblown and that have come out. You can find online. YouTube has a kind of a tutorial going through it. Um, and what else? Like it's just to demystify it. If you demystify it, and then you can see it for what it is. When people are coming to your house and they're not really showing a trace of coming in, other than shit's getting moved around. That's called ghosting. So like that's something that if somebody's really superstitious, it might scare the shit out of them. I mean, it's more scary to think that somebody's actually coming in and doing that. And sometimes even when I've been asleep, like I get frequency attacked every day, and sometimes it can induce narcolepsy. So it's just you're just vulnerable. Like I have padlocks on the inside of most of my doors at my house. You know, and it's just bizarre to have to live this way. Like I mean my toilet, my sewer had been stopped up for almost 2 years. I wouldn't live at the house here. Finally, I got it unclogged, and a friend offers to help me with some of the other plumbing, like roughing it in for the bathtub I need to put in. And before that day, suddenly the toilet was clogged again, and then it took him a week and a half to get it unclogged. And in the process, we ended up changing out, I don't know, $1,000 worth of plumbing underneath my bathroom and going out to the main sewer. And I already had all the parts and stuff to do what I needed to for the tub prior to that. And then the guy shows back up like, a week later. He's being remote neural monitored or like fucked with and targeted. And he shows up at my house just frantic, scared to death, need a place to get away. And so I'm like, yeah, come on in. Let him stay for 5 days. Suddenly he wants to go back to where he'd been staying that afternoon, needed a ride. But he'd mentioned something about something in my office. And I'd asked him to stay out of my office, which is adjacent to the bedroom upstairs where he was resting. And so I go up to the office and see where my dog had taken a shit on the floor, and he hadn't told me, even though the door was standing wide open. And the whole reason that the dog was able to get up there because the door was open. And then I started noticing some things out of place. And he had mentioned seeing the same car drive by my house 3 times. And there's only one window you can see the road from, and it's in my office. And when he first got here, I said, "Stay out of my office. Don't go through my shit. Don't move stuff around, and make yourself at home otherwise." And he was waiting for me to give him a ride back. It's like 13 miles away where he was going, and like he comes up stairs, gets his backpack, goes back downstairs, and leaves and walked back. It was like 9 degrees. Walked back to the lake where he was staying. And the day he showed up here, he had walked from the lake down Interstate 81, which is illegal, um, and to the house. He was planning on walking back to Williamsburg, Virginia, which is like nowhere near where we are. It's like 5 hours drive. I just checked out, and yeah, so found all that stuff going. Then I go to use the bathroom later the day, and it's clogged again. And it's like just maddening bullshit stuff to cost you money and time and aggravation. And in some cases, I've been told I was on the slow kill list. it is what it is. One of the goals of the program is to uh, drive that person to self annihilate, and or to get them so like worked up that they commit a crime or attack somebody or wind up in jail or psych hospital or gone. And in a lot of cases, that way they can purchase the property or they may have like hidden life insurance policies on them, like peasants insurance, and it's crazy, um, crazy, and the neurological data gets trafficked, um, like for remote monitoring, um, and like sometimes like hidden cameras, people their lives get like streamed through like red rooms on the dark web. Uh, People are bought and sold. Those people get like the like the MAC address and like your brain print to where they can log into you and torture you the way they want to, and there's wagering on TIs to see like who's going to win whatever, who when that person's going to finally um, you know um, retire from life, um, and it's like FanDuel and stuff like that. There's like you know scumbag versions of those types of um, websites and apps and stuff. Uh, on top of like the familial just disgustingness.
Gosh, we're all so lucky that you're still here today. You've just been through the ringer, and I know you're still going through it now. There's still health issues you deal with. There's still the targeting, obviously having all these memories and processing them. It's really difficult, and you've just been such an inspiration from the last podcast that we did to before that, just to all the ways that you've helped people since. I've gotten a lot of emails and outreach from people who said that you inspired them or that you helped them feel less alone if they had some of the same injuries as you or went through some of the same things, and I'm just really grateful for everything that you've done and continue doing. Even today, you didn't feel 100% today and still took and are taking the time to educate all of us and talk to all of us about this. And I'm just really grateful, Tommy. How can we support you?
Um, I sell my art, um, and so if anybody's interested in buying some art, I got everything from small little paintings like that big to mural size paintings. Um, uh, I play music and I write music, and I'm getting ready to release some new like a new album, and as well as my back catalog. That stuff will be available on different streaming platforms under Touchdown Tommy or Touchdown Tommy Edwards. Um, and I've got a Cash App. It's cash tag uh, Dr. Gonzo Bing Bong, and it's Big D, little R, Big G, and then little everything else. Dr. Gonzo Bing Bong. If you want to buy me a cup of coffee or you know take a gas or whatever, I'm relatively disabled, and I've been working some doing like historical restorations. But when the targeting is bad, and especially around the holidays, it's just hard for me to get out with anxiety anyway. When the targeting is bad, like it's bad. Like I'm almost afraid to leave the house for more than 15, 30 minutes at a time. A lot of times because I'll come back and like weeks worth of like my work, trying to organize and like get stuff to a place where I feel comfortable walking away from it for the day. It gets like totally undone, and just handfuls of dirt and gravel and grass and shit all through the house, and drawers and in containers, and along with just a mix of everything that they can find, and to just slop around. It just makes my OCD go crazy, and then I spend just days and days exhausting myself just sorting stuff to try to put it back into containers of other like things that most of the time I don't even fucking know what they are or need them. I'm an artist, and you don't have the stuff to make the art. It's you got to buy it, and that's like I call my place the magical junkyard. Like just all kinds of crazy shit. But yeah, as far as the day goes, like there've been several times where you've been talking, especially during the intro and just a second ago when I was talking, and then you came in after me, where I guess I just paused. I suddenly had like just no awareness that I was on the show or that I was talking to anybody. I'm just sitting here like about half asleep. It seems like and like I'm like, how long have I? What did I miss? Like it's weird.
And you also too, speaking of, well, actually for your art too, where if people do want to purchase that, how can they get a hold of you?
Probably like either they can email me under at it's tommymusicedwards@gmail.com, or through my TikTok, which is Tommy Edwards something on there. I can't remember exactly, but figure that one out. And or through YouTube, which is kind of hard to communicate through YouTube, but unless it's like comments, and that can be kind of weird. I have a Signal.
Okay.
They can contact me through if they'd like to, and I guess it's numbers.
Or if you want, we could have people email you and you could give your number to people that you feel safe with.
Smart. Yeah, it's a good idea, because I have a tendency to be kind of a gullible dumbass sometimes.
No, you're not. You're amazing, and you have such a big heart to help people, and it's probably hard for you to believe that there's so many bad people out there, even though you've had so many experiences with them. But it's, you have such a big heart, and like you said, you're not doing this for you. This is probably the last thing that you want to do is rehash all this stuff over and over and over again, talk about all these horrors. But there's still predators out there. Some people that have even been in your story were never prosecuted, are still free. They're still victims of these people that are suffering, and there's still tons of children going through this today, tons of survivors feeling lost. And you do this for all of them, and that's very, very evident in how you speak about this and your mission. And so the least that we can do is, step up and support you. And, it's wonderful how big your heart is, and that you just want to share so much of your life and in different ways that we can get a hold of you. But I think maybe your email would be the best way for people to first reach out. And then Signal's a great safe app too for, connecting further.
Yeah, it'd be good. So it's tommymusicedwards@gmail.com.
And you have also, I'm going to share your YouTube on the screen. You post on here pretty regularly. It's not always, you don't have a set schedule, but you do have consistent content that you've been posting, from interviews to things that you personally make to your music. There's a lot of different content on here that people can sort of check in with you and follow your daily journey and sort of indulge in all of your different talents on here. Do you want to talk a little bit about your YouTube page?
Yeah, I make music videos, and I do live streams, and I do some comedy stuff, and I've done like weird shit that I've caught on video.
Yeah.
Like supernatural kind of stuff, or ufology things that I've been able to capture, and like I have the Oddcast, which is like just like it's like it's a podcast of one with me ranting and raving, playing music and talking shit, and so every now and then there'll be somebody there to have a conversation with. But I started making I started like recording interviews with different people at one point, and I was gonna like just kind of edit some of that stuff together, because just crazy shit people share, just crazy stuff, and it's and wild, and through this, it led me to meeting a ton of people, I was on a podcast. I was a guest, like one of the co-hosts of this podcast for a while, and like I was being like just gaslit like crazy from different directions, and and then like random people would contact me. Like I had somebody contact me the night before last that I briefly had an interaction with. Uh, right about the same time, my son's mom and I were expecting a child, or my son, and and this person had been put in touch with me by one of our former board members of the Heart of Virginia Foundation. Uh, when all that was going on, like there's a local uh, business group that owns several, actually a bunch of car dealerships, and they started just buying up. Like they bought the the Pulaski Yankees, like this farm team, but like baseball. They're the ones that bought our property and had bought the racetrack, and the primary owners. Son became like a world champion, like drag, you know, car racer, and they built a drag strip for him, you know, and and they started buying up just property and property and property. One of the properties they were trying to get rid of because it wasn't going to be profitable. It was an old house that had been turned into a doctor's office, and across the street from where the Radford municipal Radford Community Hospital had stood before it was swindled away by um, oh what you call it whatever the hell they call it, Carillion, and then Carillion moved it out into the county. Um, but and it was just like a 3-story house with a 4-story modern like office complex built onto the back of it, but with no parking. And at the time I was trying to put together a drop-in center for vets and folks, you know, with mental health issues that needed daily supports. That would also double as a vocational training center, and you know, kind of a regional thing for the VA to set up to do certain services closer to the population than having to always travel to the VA, which can be, you know, half a day's drive for some people. Um, and just to have community folks that are sharing skills and knowledge and community um, and it kind of like I'd been asked by the head of family services for the Virginia National Guard at the time to help develop suicide prevention campaigns and messaging and some different things, and they were very interested in the concept that I was developing there. And then that person got sent over by the daughter of one of the owners of the building, she had been one of our board members at one point, and it was kind of an odd interaction. And then suddenly, on TikTok, this person gets back in touch with me after like 15 years, or not 15 years, but like after like this 2014, 11 years, and suddenly they're back in the area, or come back to the area, and they're friends with somebody else I'm friends with who's in the survivor community, my friend Angela. Um, uh, Maggard, whose you know, his grandmother and grandfather both worked on Stargate, and like were, you know, people who facilitated it, you know, and she, as an infant, was kidnapped and given to this family, um, and at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And I met somebody who had a very similar story out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and another one out of Wright Patterson Air Force Base families, and I wanted to do like a docu series or documentary about a lot of these folks who had been trafficked as children, whose families were military, like you know, Carrie and some other folks that similar stories that were out there, and efforts to try to pull some of those folks in to be able to share their testimony. It got tanked by the people I was working with on the podcast, and just never follow on. And then I found myself sitting there talking to somebody who's talking about is a demonologist, and there's you can't answer questions that I ask that are just like random normal questions that would make it like a more compelling like story and episode, and just weirdness. Like I feel like I was getting gaslit in that way, and like trying to bring in like legit guests that have like stories that people need to hear, as opposed to certain cryptid stories that just kind of sound like, and almost like sound like when they had the leprechaun that showed up in down in Alabama, and they had that. I don't know if you've ever seen the news reels from that. Like I think oh shit's funny. It's funny. It's and it's, I mean, was it Chappelle Show or Key and Peele? They did like a parody of it. At one point, it was just hilarious. Birmingham, I think it was Birmingham, and in this one like kind of ghetto neighborhood, that everybody's seeing the leprechaun, and just funny. Yeah, hey, y'all go out there and Google that leprechaun of Birmingham, Alabama segment. You're gonna like that one. And while you at it, look up whistle tips, and Bub or Bub Rub and Lil Sis, because that's just entertainment television right there.
Tommy, this is why we love you. Was there anything today that you wanted to tie up with, or did you want to give? We're gonna finish with a song today. Is that what's gonna happen?
Oh, you want me to play a song? I can play a song, sure. Yeah. What was the question there for a second ago?
I was gonna ask if there was anything that you wanted to close with today, or if you had any words for survivors or TIs, just from your heart.
Don't let them take your humanity, and like, don't let them turn you into a monster. If you got a good heart, keep it that way, and understand that these folks are just, they're either sociopaths or they're concrete thinkers that are easily led, and have sociopaths or psychopaths for the person giving them directives. And also, some people are just, they're being influenced, they're being nudged, and don't even realize it's going on. Like it's like Pokemon Go. The people out playing Pokemon Go don't know that you're the Pokemon. you just feel like you're being followed around. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like so like, it's like, demystify it, and don't let them steal the love you have for yourself and humanity, and smile at them, talk to them, like force conversations on them. Beautiful day, isn't it? God bless you. God bless you. I mean, some of my targeting is being done by like Pentecostal holiness, like church, and like the pastor bought my warehouse across the street where I had my business, and the house at the end of my driveway, and like I opened my phone one day, and the app that shows like all the different networks around me suddenly shows my location at the Pentecostal church on the other end of town. And that same night, I got video of somebody like running around my house outside at night, and just in drones and shit, just really weird stuff. But they sure must think a lot of me, that I got all these people that escort me around, and
they can't leave you alone.
That's right. They're just obsessed. They're obsessed, and they must just be fans. I mean, I got me one of them OnlyFans pages set up right there. Now you can go check it out. Now it's free for a limited time, and it's under Touchdown Tommy Edwards, and you go there, and you see all the fan on fan action you can stand. I got oscillators. I got ceiling fans. I got clutch fans out of a car. I got some of them Japan fans that the paper ones you fan yourself with, and there ain't no nudity or nothing, but there's lots of fans on there. I mean, I wouldn't go looking at other people's OnlyFans on there because you might get embarrassed or just whoo.
Oh
I,
my gosh,
I
that's hilarious.
I don't see how them girls stand with no clothes on. It's cold outside.
It is, especially this time of year, for sure.
That's right. But I got the fan zone down there, y'all.
Tommy's got the real fans on OnlyFans.
I do. It's a work of you would call that that's like performance art or like a comedy or we call that ironicy. Ironity. There's there is one picture of me on there, and I must say, it was on a good day, but it's implied nudity, but y'all don't see nothing, so don't rush on over there and sign up for nothing else. Whatever you do, don't do that, and don't share it with your friends because I got to get right with Jesus, to be honest with you, and stop all that nonsense. But I can't help it, that it's just such a filthy little fan. You get two fans pointing at each other, blowing each other. It's just, whew,
Oh my god,
it's terrible. It's terrible. It's just the wind is. I mean, you got the cleanup's just disgusting. You got the dust everywhere, dust bunnies everywhere, and no, that's supposed to be good for your complexion, but I don't know. I don't believe it. Yeah, so just you gotta try to laugh at yourself and the situation, and it's hard to do sometimes when people are cutting up your fucking clothes and shit and doing things that are just atrocious. Like, and cowards. I mean, if somebody wants to have a conversation with me, I'm open to that, no matter what the subject is.
Yeah.
But people hiding in the dark and like fucking with my dog and stuff like that. It's just ridiculous.
It's vile.
There's one of my songs I've written recently. It's called Porcupine, and it's about being. And another one's called Hot Phones. It's about being targeted and that. And I voiced some of my frustrations through my music, and I've invented a new genre of music. It's called outlaw gospel. I mean, we love Jesus, but we also cuss a little bit, and and it we do have some of the hill hop on there too, which is like it's like Trap-a-Latin All Stars is this next album. Trap-a-Latin All Stars. It's called the album's called Three Chords and the Truth.
Well, we're gonna be look forward to that. And I'll have all Tommy's information down the show notes. And Tommy, just thank you so much for coming on today. It's so great to see you again.
You too.
Thank you for talking about some really hard things, but also giving hope and humor in typical Tommy fashion. I can't wait to have you back on.
Yeah, likewise. Maybe sooner than 2 years from now.
I know. Yeah, I totally agree.
With the singularity and the whole like technocracy taking over, I mean, we might have to reschedule sooner than that because I don't know if I get my Borg fingers on, I don't know if I'll still be able to play the same.
Exactly.
I'm already like one of the enhanced humans, I think. But I think that happened early on. I've got the scars behind my ears and stuff, and I don't know what they put in there. I know it's not a Twix candy bar.
That's for sure.
Yeah. I would have dug it out and eaten it.
Well, let's definitely do this sooner than later. It's an honor to have you on, and I'm just really grateful for you, Tommy. So we're going to do this again, you guys. Tommy, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you guys for listening. God bless you all, and we'll see you next time.